Welcome to Outside the Box. This is a Stokastic and Fantasy Points production. Love doing this show every week with my friend Scott Barrett. You can find Scott on Twitter at ScottDFB. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I am Neil Orfield. Like I said, excited to be doing the show. We took a look last week. We've been taking a look every week at the Stokastic and Fantasy Points tools to find the best plays in DFS for the main slate. This is an ugly main slate in week 9, a lot of really low totals, but I know we can count on Scott to find some diamonds in the rough, to find some gems for us this week. Scott, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. Just to remind the listeners, this is outside the box. We're intentionally trying to think outside of the box. We're not going to just list off the cash plays, the plays that are popping in optimals. We're going to be intentional about trying to fade those plays and find some under-owned plays for tournaments, some leverage plays, intentionally fading the chalk and players who could succeed. If that is the case, and give you a larger leg up on the field. Zooming out, taking a macro look at the slate. This is one of the grossest slates I've seen in like 8 years. This is just such a terrible slate. It's honestly, it's hard for me to find plays I'm really convicted on it. There's seemingly no one who has a good matchup, is the right price, has a healthy quarterback, is low, has like theoretical upside. So it's a really gross slate, but these are historically my most profitable slates. These are the best slates to go contrarian. I think that's exactly what you have to do. I think the chalk sucks. I think it's bad for the most part, with the exceptions being Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, a few other guys, but great week to just look at what the optimal lineups are and then just intentionally try and fade those and play against those. I asked last week, because we sort of had the opposite problem. There were a lot of good games. There were no teams on bye. I asked Russ Miller, one of our DFS players who won the Millie Maker a couple of weeks ago, how he treats slates like that differently. And he said, I want to be more correlated because there's more games in play. There's a better chance at one of these games, going nuclear and having, massive total. And so I want to be correlated to that. So I like the idea of heavy game stacks. This week, I don't know, it's different just because every game is gross. Like, you look at the over unders, there's Philly, Dallas, and then just about nothing else. And even that game is not super high up. So I'm wondering how you treat things differently. Is this a week where you don't worry so much about correlation? You just want to find the best plays because like all plays are gross and the cash isn't great? Or is this another week where you want to be correlated because if any one of these gross games goes off, that provides a massive edge? So yeah, really eager to hear your thoughts on this, Neil, and have been eager to hear these thoughts for a couple of days now.
Yeah, so I don't honestly think that I am going to be changing all that much in terms of correlation. Obviously, for anybody who this isn't clear for, you're always stacking your quarterback. Like, that is a correlation. Every lineup I make, I'm going to be stacking my quarterback with at least one pass catcher, often two. But the real question comes down to, are we correlating secondary stacks like a wide receiver and running back from opposing teams or from the same team? Are we doing bringbacks? And I don't think it changes all that much for me. If it does anything, it's probably going to be slightly less correlated, I think, on this slate, just because I'm not sure that any of these games are going to go completely off. It's a really good question. We talked about it on my last show, because I think that there are two different ways of looking at it. Like, if one of these games does go completely off, it's going to quickly separate from every other game, potentially, because we might have one game that puts up 70 points while no other game puts up more than 45, in which case you're going to need a lot from that 70-point game, most likely. On the other hand, it's very possible that no game gets above like 50 points, in which case maybe you don't have enough to sustain there. I was taking a look at our lineup generator earlier, and we had a mix. We had some lineups I was getting were like big time mega stacks of that Philadelphia and Cowboys game, and like some of them had full on game stacks, and then others just had a single stack and no bring back, like just like any other week. So honestly, I was trying to think of how I would play this one differently, and ultimately I think that you can make a case for overstacking or understacking in this one. So ultimately I'm probably going to treat it much like any other week. Do you see it any differently, Scott? You're on mute. Take a drink. Everybody take a drink.
Why do I always do that? No, I think what you said makes a lot of sense, but I do really want to be leaning into the contrarian strategy this week again, being intentional about trying to fade the chalk and play off of it.
And so I think ultimately, I think you can do both. So like we've seen weeks where like the winning Millie Maker lineup had like 6 players from one game, and then we see other weeks where it is just a single stack. And I think including this week, you can play it both ways. You can certainly just single stack it. You can certainly big time game stack it. I think there are a lot of ways to play it. I like this comment from Chris Ostro because I feel like we have nailed Rashid Shaheed every week this year. Like we've called Rashid Shaheed as a play 3 times and he has gone off in those. I'm probably exaggerating when I say every week we're nailing it, but I feel like you've been the Rashid Shaheed whisperer. So we'll get to it when we talk about wide receivers. Maybe we'll talk about some Rashid Shaheed.
I can take that real quick right now.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's been easy to pick the Rashid Shaheed weeks, and that's because he's one of the most zone sensitive wide receivers in all of fantasy. Over the last 2 seasons, he ranks 12th in yards per route run against zone. He's like right there with like Stephon Diggs and guys like that. Against man coverage, he ranks like 107th. And so you really want these zone spots. That's why we were on him last week, zone heavy defense. He's up against Chicago this week, which that's a great on paper matchup, but schematically, they were one of the most zone heavy defenses. Shout out to the coverage matrix, our new tool at Fantasy Points Data. If you look across the full season, they're like, oh, wow, that's a top 10 zone defense. But if you look back over the last 3 or 4 weeks, they're one of the top 5 most man heavy defenses. I think he's a fine play. He's, at his price point, he may only need 1 catch to hit, 4x value, but I like a lot of sub 4K guys this week that no one else is talking about. So I'll have those players slightly ahead of Shaheed this week.
Okay. Because you brought it up, why don't you direct me where to find this coverage matrix on?
So click on Data Suite.
Oh, it is in the Data Suite. Okay.
And then scroll down to coverage matrix. This is brand new. We're going to have, and click on defense.
Yep.
That's right.
All right. Once it comes up, I bet I'll have that option. Yep. Defense.
And so I would click on Bears in the search bar and then go to split week. And then you could see how things have really changed over the last few weeks. Split week. Yeah. And we're going to have more tools coming out next week and the week after and the week. We also added a run pass split tool. So you could see how run heavy your pass heavy teams are in the red zone, on first down, in the second half, in negative game script, et cetera. And that's just what we have. So I would click on man percentage or week. And you'll just see, yeah. So week 8, they were the most man heavy team. Week 6, they were the most man heavy team. Week 7, above average.
Okay. Nice. All right. So you can kind of easily see the matrix. I'll have to get better at knowing which players are better against man versus players that are better against zone.
That's what our next tool should be coming out in a week or so is going to do for you. It's just going to perfectly look at each receiver, quarterback, see the coverage shells that they do best against and how often they're expected to face them. And it'll just give you like an expected fantasy points per route run based on it and like a boost over their average. And so it's like just going to perfectly highlight for you the DFS plays that stand out based on this. So if you want to play around with the coverage matrix, I think it's free this week and next week. And then we're going to keep adding some more tools to this suite.
Nice. That is good for people like me who don't necessarily know off the top of my head who is going to be better against in different matchups. That'll be awesome for me. Thank you for making it idiot proof for me, Scott. All right, let's take a look at last week's Millie Maker winning lineup. And I tweeted out our lineup, Scott, already. We finished in 1,234th, which is well within the top 1% in the Millie Maker. And obviously, we turned $40 into 100. Like that's not the goal because we had 2 lineups ultimately. Maybe it's $50. I don't remember how much the buy-in was. Either way, we made a little bit of money, but like we were so close to so much more. In our lineup, we had Jonathan Taylor, who seemed to get hurt after getting to 95 yards just before that 100-yard bonus. We had Devontae Smith came up 1 yard shy of the 100-yard bonus. Otherwise, would have been a smash as well. So we were close to an absolutely great lineup. We still, I think, had a lot of the right pieces. Some of them overlapping with this Millie Maker winning lineup. This one did have that Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup stack. Scott, I know you were telling me that you wanted to take an L on this last week. We were talking about, you were saying that you think you might have got it wrong to not really, and we were poking holes in the chalk. So you poked some holes in Dak Prescott. I think that you were a little bit hard on yourself relative to the actual analysis you gave, which was really strong. But you seem to think that maybe you should have liked Dak Prescott better than you did last week.
Yeah, I wish you showed the other Millie winning lineup, which was just like straight from our show.
Oh yeah,
we really nailed like a ton of amazing calls last week, including calls at low ownership. Like in this lineup, I said AJ Brown was the high price wide receiver to pay up for. I said Trey McBride was the best tight end play of the slate. I said Kittle was number 2. But the one thing I got wrong, and it cost me, because I had Sam Howell, who was the number 1 quarterback of the slate. Had a bunch of perfect lineups that were just missing CeeDee Lamb. And so we talked about it. It was Dak was showing as chalky for you guys. He ended up not being that chalky, but you guys had him as the second highest owned quarterback of the slate. You liked him. John Proctor at our site liked him. And I was a little too nitpicky. I was like, well, listen, it's a slot funnel matchup for CeeDee, but he's been out targeted by Michael Gallup over the last 4 weeks. Jerry Jones is talking about how he doesn't need more targets. They want to spread the ball around. And then with Dak Prescott, it's actually a below average matchup on paper. And they rank bottom 3 by pass rate over expectation. They really want to run the ball, etc. And that was the hole I poked in him. And then, the next day on Discord, Johnny was like, oh, I'm playing a ton of Dak Prescott. It's a no-brainer because Tony Pollard's one of the highest owned plays of the slate. The total's super high. Pollard has struggled. And it's like, yeah, when you reframe it like that, I was definitely wrong. And I wanted to beat myself up for that. Well, and then you'll also see DeAndre Hopkins. We had someone in the chat ask about Will Levis, and I laughed. I think I did say he's like a super volatile play.
Yeah.
But definitely should have taken him more seriously. And like, maybe I think it was the 3rd best ever debut performance from a quarterback. But outside of that, it was a great week. But when you don't have the wide receiver who drops 40 plus DK, that's going to make a big difference in your results.
Yeah. I think that you're being too hard on yourself about being wrong about Dak. I think that it's a play that worked out came in at lower ownership than we expected. And it's not like you were completely poo-pooing the play. We were trying to poke holes in the top plays. I want to give you a chance because you told me that you wanted to talk about that play from last week. But let's see. You say that there is another Millie Maker winning lineup that you think was
the 555. From what I remember, I might be wrong.
I think you told me it was a 5. Yep, Kloss of Heaven. I've actually met Kloss of Heaven in person at one of the Tournament of Champions. So he's a doctor.
He's a sharp.
He's a doctor, I believe. Really, really sharp guy. Yeah. All right. So this one, he has Brock Purdy with George Kittle. I know you loved George Kittle. Interesting. This one actually does not have Trey McBride, who you were like totally in on Trey McBride. That was one that I was off on. Like I was like, no, I don't buy it. I don't think Trey McBride has the talent. It's a tough matchup. You were on it. Greg was on it. Everybody else was on it. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do it. And that was wrong. It was definitely wrong that I was not on Trey McBride. But interesting to see that he actually didn't make it into this one. But you're right. Like the Brock Purdy stack with George Kittle, who you also loved at tight end. Gus Edwards, a guy that I loved. Breece Hall, a guy that we were both on last week. AJ Brown. When I brought up Devontae Smith last week, and that's a funny thing that keeps on happening. I keep on bringing up these wide receiver 2s, and I'm like, why not Jalen Waddle? Why not Devontae Smith? And they do like pretty well, but like the whole reason is, or one of the reasons I like him is maybe this is the week that they are the guy, and every week they do pretty well, and then the alpha just outscores them anyway. So that happened again this week. Devontae Smith, pretty good, but AJ Brown, as you said, was the guy that you really wanted. You also said, well, why not Jalen Waddle? When I brought up Devontae Smith, why don't you go back to Jalen Waddle? And of course, Jalen Waddle also did outscore Devontae Smith this week. Rashid Shaheed, you liked quite a bit. Jordan Addison, you liked Vikings defense. I think we talked about. So yeah, this is definitely a lineup that could have come straight from this show. Any other notes on this one?
Yeah, just that last week was definitely a week where we were the sum of our parts were stronger on the whole than separately, however that saying goes.
Yeah.
Because you were all over Gus Edwards and I wasn't. So that was a great call by you. And then you stuck to your guns on Dak. So if you, I don't know, if you picked the correctly from our disagreements, could have been literally perfect day. So yeah.
And I mean, we still put up nearly 200 fantasy points in our lineup. One of the 2 lineups we built on stream, again, finished in the top 1%. So yeah, I feel like we definitely made a really strong lineup together last week. We have had some weeks where none of our lineups cashed. That's going to be the case. But it was really cool to see, us getting a lineup in the top 1% when we've, what have we made, like 20 lineups together? So to get one in the top 1% already.
We're probably up on the year, right? Or close to it.
We're definitely close to. I don't actually know. I have not been tracking whether we're up on the year, but we're certainly close to it. Just that one lineup, it felt so close to so much more. With JT getting injured, with Devontae Smith coming up a yard short, it was just so many things were so close to working out for us. And we also, I had assumed that we had played Rashid Shaheed in one of our lineups. I think you had too. And then we realized, damn, we didn't play Shaheed in either lineup. So that was, could have been a lot more, but whatever. We got in the 1%. Hopefully we can do even better this week. We'll keep trying. But yeah, really cool to see Colossus of Heaven. Really, it's from a, do you know it's a song or a poem or something? I feel like it's a song, Colossus of Heaven. I talked to him about where his name came from. I feel like it's a song, but I don't remember what it was.
It's Yeats. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's a poem. Okay. Yep. All right. Congrats to him on his second Millie Maker, at least second. That's the second that I know of. All right. We always do these survivor picks. I did not even check if we won last week. Chargers or Dolphins? Do you know what were the scores there? Let me see.
Good question. I won. And yeah, Chargers, if you want to know my secret for advancing so far, it's that I've gotten lucky. So there's that. We both advanced.
Dolphins. Yep. I mean, I've already lost one. It's one that I'm like, are we going to keep doing this even though I've already lost? But we'll do it. We'll keep going until you lose one. We'll keep going.
All right, that's fair.
All right. So looking at the top plays this week, let's see what the biggest spreads are. So we have the Saints favored by 8.5. That seems like a pretty easy one. The Browns favored by 11. So we have some bad teams with big spreads here, which is kind of nice to see so late in the year when you're trying to find teams that you haven't used yet. And then outside of those two, we've got the Ravens favored by 6. Who do you like? Who do you like this week?
I'll be honest, the Bears make me nervous. I don't know how much I trust Deshaun Watson, but it's hard to argue against 11.5 point spread. And especially, I've already used so many good teams. I don't know when I'd use the Browns again. So we can just go with the Browns. I feel like that's an easy.
All right. You go Browns. I'm going Bears. If I have wait, do I still have the Bears?
The Bears? Why?
Wait, sorry, not the Bears. The
Saints.
The
Saints. Against the Bears.
Yes, the Saints against. Thank you for correcting me there, because I definitely
that's super contrarian.
Yeah. All right, I'm going Saints. You're going Browns. Okay. All right. That's good. We made that section quick and easy, because I think most of our audience probably does not care about our survivor picks. They care more about the DFS. So good to get that quick and out of the way. You ready to talk some quarterbacks? We'll start talking about the chalk. We'll talk about the contrarian plays. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
All right. So quarterbacks, looking at the top stacks tool in terms of quarterback ownership. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, those are our two above 10% owned plays. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts and or Lamar this week?
Yeah, I definitely prefer Lamar. He's my cash quarterback of the week on both sites. But I mean, obviously Jalen Hurts is a really strong play. It's just easier for me to poke some holes in him. He's had an amazing strength of schedule thus far. But Dallas is a really tough matchup. He ranks 7th best in schedule adjusted against quarterbacks. And then he's also, I think, hampered by a knee injury. He only had 1 scramble last week. He's averaging just 1.8 yards per carry over his last 2 games. You have the bye week 10. So I could see them taking it easy on him. And again, this is his toughest matchup outside of that Jets game. So wouldn't shock me if it was a floor performance. But then again, it's really hard to argue against him and AJ Brown and how successful they've been At ownership, I would prefer Dak Prescott. I'd say probably Lamar and then Dak are the clear two best quarterback plays at ownership. He just has like the way better matchup in this game environment. Eagles are the number one pass funnel defense this year, which is great news for Dak. You know, a lot of the issues early on was that the team was going so run heavy unnecessarily, and then they went the opposite route last week and it paid dividends. Eagles are a bottom 4 defense against opposing quarterbacks by schedule adjusted, shootout potential. So definitely like those guys. And I'll probably just fade AJ Brown just because it feels like one of those weeks where I want to get different from the rest of the field, but you don't have to get that contrarian. He's a really strong play.
Okay. So your favorite sounds like is Dak, Lamar, and then Hurts of the top end in terms of ownership guys.
I might go Lamar and then Dak. I guess at that ownership, yeah, I'd probably flip it.
Yeah, we got some positive leverage in the top stack. So Dak coming in at 7% ownership, 9.5% chance of Dallas being the top stack. So as of now, looking pretty good for Dallas there. All right. So I mean, honestly, we're pretty spread out at quarterback. So everybody is relatively contrarian here. Who do you like of these contrarian options?
That's what I'm saying about this week is like they're legitimately all in play.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to argue strongly about one over the other. We can go back to the well on Sam Howell. You know, it's kind of weird that he's still this low owned after last week finishing as the QB1. He's exceeded 17 DraftKings fantasy points in 6 of his last 8 games. He averages 23.5 in those 6 games. That's like right there with Jalen Hurts. You know, the matchup's not amazing, but definitely like a value with underrated upside. I like Gardner Minshew a lot. He's like one of the most underrated quarterbacks in fantasy. Maybe not real life NFL, but certainly in fantasy, he's averaging 19.9 DraftKings fantasy points per game in 4 starts this season. Throughout his career, he averages 19.3. That's like 3 fantasy points per game more than Trevor Lawrence. This is a team we want to target in DFS, either Indianapolis itself or on the opposite side. The ranks, they're giving up the second most combined points per game. Carolina is like an extreme run funnel defense. So that's maybe a little bit of a concern. And then like the matchup isn't amazing on paper. It's just big stack upside and definitely mispriced, underrated upside. CJ Stroud is another one who stands out. He's kind of, he burned a ton of my lineups last week that were like otherwise awesome. He was facing an extreme run funnel defense last week, but it's been so weird that Houston's gone so run heavy when like their running game sucks, and like they went super pass heavy to start the year and it was working and they were winning games. This isn't a great matchup on paper, but Tampa Bay is definitely one of the top pass funnel defenses. So just hopefully that forces Houston to keep their foot on the gas. Obviously, like Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown feel really cheap with like a clear established ceiling. So even if you don't think CJ Stroud's a value, like factor in the stack and the stacking upside, I think he is. And then like if you really want to get deep into the weeds, Deshaun Watson, obviously like really strong play. He's another one where like it's so hard to trust him because he looked like ass, like horrific the last time he was out in the field. And like, he honestly didn't look great before that either, but he was still putting up fantasy production. He had 2 of his 3 games with 21 plus DraftKings fantasy points. It's a strong matchup, top 5 matchup. I really like Amari Cooper. Some of the other options. So stacking upsets high. I like Jordan Love. He's another quarterback. Like maybe he stinks at real football, but he's been fine for fantasy. If you just remove that one Raiders game, he's averaging 20 DraftKings fantasy points per game. All of his stacking partners are cheap. Rams just got destroyed by Dak Prescott, probably good starting field position, most drives. And then we just keep getting deep in the weeds. Like Mac Jones, like he stinks. He has no ceiling. All of his receivers are hurt, but he gets like the nuts matchup. Washington was easily like the worst defense against quarterbacks, and he just lost their only two good players, 4,900. Derek Carr, I have game script concerns, but the implied point totals there, slate high, 25. He's hit the 3-point bonus in 3 straight games. Great matchup. Aiden O'Connell, you could just say like, well, he's super cheap and hasn't played terribly. And, the stack is obvious. Daniel Jones, it's just 5,600 and we know he has a ceiling. And like, what if he runs? He gets Andrew Thomas back, ideally, or hopefully, probably. You could stack him with Saquon Barkley. They're like just barely positively correlated over the last 2 seasons. And like every wide receiver on the team is 3,500 or less. And so I feel like what I would do this week is if I like entered a 20 max, really like just spread out quarterback exposure with the exception of, let's say, Lamar and Dak, and just, kind of have a bulk percentage allocated to them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that is probably going to be my approach. I'm going to be probably spreading out among a lot of quarterbacks. I got to say, I had not thought about playing Daniel Jones this week. Doesn't look good in the tools, but like you can certainly like you kind of made some of the point for Daniel Jones. I had not realized that the offensive line is getting healthier. I brought that up a few weeks ago as like something that I'd be looking out for. Like when this offensive line gets healthier, maybe they'll be a little better. Maybe Daniel Jones a little bit healthier now. And we've seen that the Giants passing attack has been getting more and more condensed. So I actually, now that you've brought it up, I'm hadn't thought about it at all this morning. And now I'm thinking maybe that Giant stack is kind of a sneaky play there with Daniel Jones potentially healthier, the offensive line getting a little bit healthier, and the condensed target tree to really inexpensive wide receivers. I kind of like that idea of playing some. And I know the point you're making is that you have a lot of options here, which is definitely true. I wanted to take a look to show people the condensed target tree for the Giants, and I'm having to refresh here. But it's on the year we have, and Darren Waller out obviously is going to help the remaining pass catchers as well. It's taking a minute to load right now. I think I have too many pages open. Been having some issues with pages not opening for me. So let me refresh one more time. Otherwise, it's just Jalen Hyatt has been, sorry, not Jalen Hyatt. Darius Slayton has been playing over 90% of snaps the past few weeks. Wan'Dale Robinson, obviously, as well. And then Jalen Hyatt, like over 50% now. So feels like the Giants are getting to the point of condensed enough, and especially with Darren Waller out now, that I'm kind of intrigued by that Daniel Jones option that I did not even consider last week. But yeah, route participation, Darius Slayton 92% last week, Wan'Dale Robinson up at 79%. So pretty condensed route participation. They're figuring out who their guys are in New York. So I do like that call in particular. But I'm with you. Like it is ugly. It is a week where you can.
He did have a combined -1 yards last week.
You're right. I mean, that is a very, but that was not, Daniel Jones was not there.
Right.
So things have changed a little bit this week. So I think it's, and nobody, people aren't going to want to go there. Of course, you can see just looking at the top stack tool, we do have some ownership going here, 5.6%, but that's algorithm based. Who knows if the human element will come into play and people will say, I'm not playing Daniel Jones. He's been so bad. So it wouldn't be shocking to me to see him come in even lower own. I think that you kind of talked about every quarterback that I wanted to bring up with you, to be honest. I really want to hear your thoughts on the Deshaun Watson stack against Arizona. I wanted to hear your thoughts on CJ Stroud, Mac Jones, Derek Carr. These are all guys that I'm in on. I'm debating whether I should be more in on Gardner Minshew. I think you made some good points about him. Michael Pittman really stands out in the Stokastic tools, so it does seem like a pretty easy stack there. So maybe I'll have to think about that one a little bit more. But I think you did a good job of just covering the entire context of all of these quarterbacks and how many of them are in play. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, I think my girlfriend cranked the heat up and then left. So I'm gonna have to turn my heat off real quick. Just give me a second.
All right,
sweating my balls off.
you go do that. I'll do my Bet365 read. So, guys, if you live in one of these states, it's only available in 6 states: Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. If you live in one of those states, we have a fantastic deal from Bet365. Bet $5, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Just a fantastic deal there from Bet365. So if you live in one of those 6 states, check it out. If you don't, sorry, not available to you. But if you live in one of those and you have not yet signed up for Bet365, again, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, or Colorado, $5 into $150 in bonus bets. You have to be 21 plus to play in most states. And if you were someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, you good? Is that you need some water, some ice, maybe something to cool you down?
I'm good.
All right, cool. Anything else about quarterbacks?
Not really.
All right, sounds good. You got a shout out here, Icon. I'm trying to decide if this is an inappropriate name in some way. I don't think it is, though. It says, hey, I signed up for Fantasy Points last week after this show ended. And then he says, the Fantasy Points tool is legit and the price is on point. Yeah, it's a fantastic deal. I've been using it a ton this year, so I'm definitely appreciating the Fantasy Points tools. And we'll take a look at some of the tools more closely as we go. Unless you do you have anything that you in particular want to look at right now? We already showed the matrix grid, but if there's anything else that you wanted to call attention to, Scott, I know you've been doing a ton of new stuff. Otherwise, we can also do that later if you want to think on it, what you wanted to take a look at.
Yeah. I'm good. We can do that later, I guess. Shout out to Icon for joining. Appreciate it. Right now we're 50% off everything. If you're a DFS/gambling player, Fantasy Points Premium, 50% off. Fantasy Points Data, 75% off. We're really sick of being the hidden gem of the space that, like, you're the best site. I don't want to tell anyone else about it. That's why we're doing this free show. So would appreciate you checking us out, subscribing.
Yeah, check it out if you haven't already. As I said, I've been using it regularly. Really is some great stuff there, and not even just the data suite. You also have some of these other, this isn't in the data suite, but another tool. You have a lot of great tools on the site. So yeah, I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already done so. And of course, I am representing Stokastic here. I got to say, I have had a lot of success over the years using the Stokastic tools. You can also find the links in the description of this video for the Stokastic tools. We have varying price points that you can sign up for the Stokastic NFL tools. You can do the Data Max package, the base package, a lot of different options for you. The link is in the description, and you can get access to the Top Stacks tool, which I use as my main guide in determining who I want to play. And then, of course, the boom bust I use for non-quarterback positions and figuring out who has the best odds of booming, who is going to be over-owned, et cetera, et cetera. So we have some great tools, and you can find both sites in the link in the description of this video if you want to check out our various tools. All right, we're going to take a look at some running backs, Scott. And it's kind of an interesting slate, in my opinion, for running backs. Let's see, main slate. I'll sort by position here. And we'll start by talking about the chalk as usual. Chalkiest running back on the slate right now, we have Alvin Kamara at 28% projected ownership, Josh Jacobs 24%, Bijan 19, Pollard 19, Taylor 19, Barkley 19. We actually have a number of pretty chalky running backs. So let's start talking about everybody 15% projected ownership and higher. How are you feeling about these guys? Anybody that you hate at ownership and anybody you love? How are you feeling about the chalk today?
Yeah. So at the top, I said I'm going to be intentional about fading the chalk, and this is where one of the key exceptions kicks in. I really like Alvin Kamara. I think he's an amazing play. Saquon Barkley, I think, is right there with him. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm going to go massively overweight the field on both of them. If I have like them both on 50% of my lineups, I think that's totally in play. Josh Jacobs, think he's a really strong play, absurd volume. It's a good matchup. It was a top 7 matchup before the Giants traded away one of their best run defenders. But I mean, the counter argument's easy as well. It's, Aiden O'Connell's not great.
Right.
Jacobs hasn't done anything all year. And again, we're trying to poke holes in the chalk. Like, Bijan Robinson is amazing at football. He shouldn't be 6,100 because he's so talented. But maybe this is a Tyler Algier week. We've been talking about this for a while. Bijan Robinson actually performs better in negative game script. And this is a game where we should expect Atlanta to win. And if you look at what Atlanta's done in their 4 victories, Tyler Algier has 17 plus carries, 1.5 targets per game. Bijan Robinson has 11 carries in victories, 3.3 targets per game. And so with the field massively on Bijan as a top 5 play and Tyler Algier's drawing 0% ownership, I think he makes a lot of sense as a GPP leverage play. The counter argument against that is, well, Tyler Algier sucks. Fair. But I mean, he's 0% owned, and his odds of finishing in the winning Millie Maker lineup are certainly above that at the very least.
That's not what I want to do. I want to go to, does Tyler Algier, what is his yards per carry? I thought he was really good last year.
Well, he was really good this year. If you look at rushing yards over expectation per carry, which we actually don't have in the suite, we have to build up a larger sample size. But if you look at that, he's been like, I don't know, he's like bottom 10 in the league, whereas Bijan's top 10. And, there's a lot of credence to like Arthur Smith, just play your best players.
Right. 197 snaps for Algier. Just looking at this, I was going to bring up last.
So what you could do here is you could go to the filter
for the season, or for just last week. What do you want to look at?
Oh, for the full season.
All right.
Filter, play, and then scroll down to like leading, trailing. Right there. Up.
Where do we? Up.
Down.
Oh no, I'm
down.
Leading, trailing, tied.
Yeah.
All right, so we want
to go to trail leading.
Okay. Yeah, I've never used this filter.
You could also do it by wins or losses.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so look, 24 carries versus 7, 2 targets to 4. Do me a favor. Can you filter further? Scroll up to yards to goal, and then do inside the 10. So the third one down from the top.
Yep.
And then hit apply. And so let's see what near end zone usage looks like as well. Because that's what matters, is touchdown upside, right? And so 4 carries inside the 10. Bijan just had 1 target. So it's like, legitimately, we should expect more touches for Algier if game script's on point, as Vegas thinks it is, and potentially more touchdown upside. There's always the case that, this week Arthur Smith just plays the good player. Like that was the argument for CeeDee Lamb last week. This is so stupid that Michael Gallup's out targeting him, and then the team's like, you're right. So you never know, but again, 0.4% projected ownership versus the third highest owned running back of the slate. I think this is a strong leverage play, and he's a punt. He's 4,700. So people are playing Keontae Ingram and Devin Singletary, and so certainly credence that. Do you want to go back to the running backs page?
Yeah. So I just want to say, I was going to bring up last week when looking at this, because it seemed to me based on last week that maybe Tyler Algier falling out of favor based on the snap shares, but it sounds like you think that it's just so game script dependent, that was just the way that game went. But in week to week, Tyler Algier might have more of a role.
Which week are you talking about?
So this is week 8. So this is last week. We had Tyler Algier played just 15 snaps. He did have 8 carries in his 15 snaps. But just didn't have heavy usage last week.
Right. So that was a game that got out of hand quickly. Sometime in the second quarter, it was like 14-3, and then it kind of, then it was like 21-3 or 21-9, and so they just like trailed throughout. And this is, teams use committees differently. New England, historically, you rotate drives, so like even if they like last year, Ramondre, who they had above Damian Harris, it was like 2 drives for Ramondre, 1 drive for Damian, and then rinse repeat. But a lot of other teams, what's very common is they do early down workhorse versus like scat back or scat back plus, positive game script to the workhorse, negative game script, and obvious passing situations to the quote unquote scat back. It's something along those lines, just ice the game with Tyler Algier. And I do think that's how they do it. I mean, like they're only 3.5 point favorites, but Jaron Hall's like the clear QB3 on the team. He sucked in the preseason. The QB2 got hurt. They traded for Joshua Dobbs. So don't have a ton of faith in the Vikings to keep this competitive.
Yeah, sadly, I don't either. Without Kirk Cousins, really putting us in a tough spot. The Vikings clawing back to 500, and then Kirk Cousins getting hurt is just worst possible case scenario for the Vikings. We're not tanking. We're just in no man's land once again. But at least maybe they'll have a shot at winning with Josh Dobbs. All right, we can move back to looking at the running backs. I'll sort by. What do you want me to sort by? Salary or ownership?
No, keep going ownership. I want to trash talk the chalk.
All right, yeah, let's trash the chalk.
We can name that segment. Tony Pollard. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like as Josh Jacobs, right? It's like everyone's been screaming this guy's a regression candidate, and it's just not coming. The production's not there. And last week they just totally went away from him because the passing game was working. And this does not look like the get right spot for Pollard. The Eagles are the number one pass funnel defense. They're a top 3 defense against opposing running backs. The counter argument against that is like, who's been screaming Josh Jacobs and Tony Pollard are buy low targets and regression candidates, like me. So, but right. When they're the chalkiest players of the slate on a gross slate where you want to be getting unique, that's the counter argument against it. Jonathan Taylor, let's go back to the Bijan Robinson conversation. So you and I went super heavy on Jonathan Taylor. We thought he was an amazing play last week because Zach Moss was barely healthy enough to play. He was a true game time decision that went down to the wire. Jonathan Taylor had 80 rushing yards in the first quarter and then just disappeared. You said he got hurt, and I don't know, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He was asked about it. Nick Sirianni was asked about it. Not Nick Sirianni.
Steichen? Or wait.
Shane Steichen, I'm sorry. Yeah. Was asked about it, and they both said, no, he's healthy. He was fine. Zach Moss is getting work because Zach Moss is playing out of his damn mind. We're riding the hot hand, and, they both have hot hands, right? And so if you look at the last 3 weeks, the split in the backfield by XFP, which is the way to look at it, week 6, it was 51-49 in Taylor's favor. Week 7, Zach Moss got hurt in this game. It was 61-39 in Taylor's favor. Last week, a game Moss was barely healthy enough to play. It was 49-51 in Moss's favor. To me, this just looks like a clear 50-50 committee backfield for the most part, maybe like the slightest edge to Jonathan Taylor. The good news is it's an amazing matchup. Carolina is giving up the second most schedule adjusted rushing fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're probably the number one run funnel among all defenses. But here's the thing. Jonathan Taylor's $600 more expensive, and he's 22 times as highly owned. So this looks again to me like an Algier versus Bijan thing where it's like obvious leverage play. Right? Like Moss is playing well, and like the volume is basically dead even. So why is Jonathan Taylor 19% top 5 and Moss is 1.2%?
Right. We actually had that conversation on the earlier show. I brought up that I think I might play some Zach Moss this week. Of course, I also said that part of the reason is for superstitious reasons to get Jonathan Taylor going. But for those wondering, I'm not actually superstitious. That's not actually my reasoning. I just I like.
Oh, I thought you wear flannels every Saturday because that was your lucky shirt.
That's just what I wear all the time. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the day is. That I'm always wearing flannels. Yeah, not superstitious, but I agree with your take. That is like Zach Moss. I think that at some point Jonathan Taylor is going to take over, but Zach Moss has to fail, like give him some reason to lose playing time. And he just hasn't done anything to lose his playing time yet. So against the Panthers, this is the first week I've been over and over. I've been saying, I'm not playing Zach Moss. I'm not playing Zach Moss, particularly in that Tennessee matchup. It was like, this is the no-brainer of all no-brainers. Of course, we're not playing Zach Moss against Tennessee. And then, of course, he went completely off against Tennessee. This is the first week that I think I actually will have some shares of Zach Moss. Would you play the two of them together in any lineups?
You could do that. If you look at Gardner Minshew starts, there was like one game where he threw 55 times. There were 2 games where the running backs combined for like 40 plus touches. I probably wouldn't do that, but I certainly understand it. I'm not done trashing the chalk though.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Trash away.
Ramondre Stevenson is popular because he's popping in models, but I think that's literally the only reason to play him. Like he's done nothing all year. It's like a close to even split, especially inside the red zone. And he has seen more target volume of late, but he is the sort of running back who does better in negative game script than positive game script because he's better as a pass catcher and Zeke is better as a runner. I get that the matchup's amazing, but it's like he's legitimately done just about nothing all year.
See, I came into this week really excited about Ramondre Stevenson as a very contrarian play. I was like, nobody's going to play Ramondre Stevenson because he's been so bad all year, and it's been a pass funnel defense for the Commanders. So I thought for sure. And then I look at ownership, and I'm like, damn it! Like it kind of like I'm with you. Like at this ownership, I don't know that I'm going to get to the ownership that we have on, and I keep on clicking the wrong.
I think the field will, because like any optimal you run has him in there, and it's like, what are we doing with this guy?
So the reasons to play Ramondre Stevenson, I hear you that like he hasn't done anything all year. The split has been fairly even, but I mean, last week he played 61% of snaps. You see here, he had 10 carries. He ran 16 routes. So like, seemed to have a little bit more of the split on Zeke.
Yeah. It's definitely trending more in his direction. Like the big thing for him is like target share has really jumped up the last 3 weeks, and maybe it jumps even further, following 2 injuries to starting outside wide receivers to the team. And it is an amazing matchup. It's just like the guy has sucked for fantasy all year, and now he's chalk for inexplicably.
Yeah, I'm
I get
frustrated that he is chalk. So I hear you saying I wanted him as like my contrarian play at chalk. It's like that kind of takes away the main reason I wanted to play him.
Right.
It is also the Commanders' defense. Like they have been a pass funnel, but now they traded away 2 of their best defensive players. So I'm like, well, maybe Bill Belichick will just run all over. Who knows? But I get it. I get why he's chalk. I just didn't think he was going to be, and I'm definitely disappointed that he is. And yeah, it's pretty easy to poke holes in a running back who. We're in week 9 and he has not yet done it. So I hear what you're saying. All right, keep going. Keep poking at the chalk.
I like Rashad White. Strong value, similar to Stevenson. Target share is really spiked up. They've abandoned the run game, which is smart. They should absolutely do that. And in lieu of that, they've been using the passing game as an extension of the running game. Still, you could argue he has like no upside. DeAndre Swift, I think, is like a strong value. I think there's a chance he actually goes overlooked, especially with Jalen Hurts nursing that knee injury. Maybe there's more touchdown upside this week, but it's an absolutely brutal matchup. Devin Singletary, I get the value proposition there. He was sort of already supplanting Dameon Pierce as the RB1, but this run game has sucked all year. Devin Singletary's not very good. This is a coaching staff that historically prefers a committee, even when there is an injury to a starter. Chuba Hubbard, I actually like. I think he's a fine play. Still going to be a committee back. Maybe not a perfect matchup, but he ranked top 10 in XFP last week. Teams really soured on Miles Sanders.
17.4 XFP.
Yeah, that's really strong. 40 snaps to 11 to 9 to Blackshear. They might just hate Miles Sanders. Doing this to a player you just made the 6th highest price running back in the National Football League, and demoting him by week 8 is like so unprecedented. Good on them for having like the willingness to own up to their mistakes. But yeah, that's really good news for Chuba Hubbard. 66% snap share, top 10 XFP. I think he goes overlooked when he's probably a better play than Devin Singletary and some of these other slight values in the 5K or less range. Aaron, I mean, we're no longer in chalk territory, but Aaron Jones, I get it. It's just like the coaching staff has been honest these past 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago, they said, he's not ready yet. We're going to keep him limited. They did. Last week, they said the exact same thing. And this week, even though he was limited in practice all week and wearing a non-contact jersey the entire time, he said, we're ready to unleash it. And so that's really like all you need to hear for Aaron Jones. The bet is, he was being drafted as a high-end RB2 in season-long leagues all offseason for a reason. He has a clearly established DFS ceiling that's like shockingly high. He's very game script sensitive throughout his career, despite being a guy who catches passes. And Packers probably curb stomp the Rams if Stafford's out. He's a fine play. Jerome Ford, another fine play. It's like Cleveland has an awesome offensive line. They feature the running backs to a large extent. Matchup is amazing. To me, I question the touchdown upside. Since week 4, he's played on just 2 of the team's 34 red zone snaps. So like 0 touchdown ceiling, but much like Nick Chubb, he could break off a long run.
Is he your favorite of the Cleveland guys, Jerome Ford? Because we had a pretty split, just looking at the snaps here, 27, 23, 24. Do you feel strongly, do you think Jerome Ford will have the best opportunities generally? Or do you think?
I think this week, yeah. He was another one where it's like, he's not healthy enough to play, or it's like, we're not sure he's healthy enough to play, and he's like active, didn't do much in the first half. Then second half, they kind of featured him to a large extent, and he looked good, and he's supposedly fully healthy. But I mean, Kareem Hunt, I do think is going to get the bulk of the red zone opportunities. So maybe he has multiple touchdown upside, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to show
these are all, like, I remember I led off with, I'm going to be super overrate Kamara and Saquon. So
yeah,
this is just further justification for that. Keontae Ingram, I get that he looks like a value at 4,300. He could really be a full-on bell cow this week. They lost James Conner, they lost DeMarcado. So they may have no choice but to thrust him into like a full-on bell cow workload. The counter argument against him, which is really strong, is that he's terrible. He's like so absolutely dog shit. He averages 2.4 yards per carry in his career. Like, I would not be shocked if Tony Jones gets work. I wouldn't be shocked if they activate Corey Clement and he gets work. He is just like so bad at football. Gus Edwards, I guess I'll let you handle that, but clearly he has multiple touchdown upside. He has game script in his favor. He's seeing an expanded role. He had 67% of the backfield XFP last week. Over the last 2 weeks, 17 carries, 1.5 targets per game, with shockingly good efficiency. So you're the Gus Edwards whisperer, so I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I mean, Gus Edwards, the price has come up, the ownership has come up, so I don't feel strongly about Gus Edwards this week. I think it's a fine matchup with Seattle, but last week it was really just, he was really low owned, he was cheaper than this, and they were playing against Arizona. So I think Gus Edwards, a very talented running back. I think he's one of the more underrated pure runners in the NFL. Like, he's always been like a 5.5, 6 yards per carry kind of runner. Since
he entered the league, he ranks second behind only Nick Chubb in yards per carry.
Yeah, and that is just nuts. And like, nobody talks about him like he is a great runner. And he's never, like, doesn't come into the season as a starter, but he's just been consistently good. So I like Gus Edwards quite a bit. I don't feel as strongly about it this week as I did last week, just because the ownership has come up, the price has come up, the matchup not quite as good. So I think he's a fine play, but honestly, it's not a huge stand that I'm taking on Gus Edwards this week. He looks just fine to me at 8% own. Let's see, anybody else that we need to talk about here? So you have some interest in Algier. You have some interest in who was I looking for?
Oh my God, I was on mute again. What a jerk.
Oh,
these are super contrarian GPP plays with leverage, who like Tyler Algier, Zach Moss. No one's playing those guys. I like those names just as much as like the Jerome Ford, Gus Edwards, Keontae Ingram tier. Other running backs that we haven't discussed. No, I think we nailed everyone. Again, that's just what I'm doing, is like, I see Kamara and Saquon really standing out. So just to make life easy on myself is like eat that chalk and try and get unique everywhere else. Again, Jacobs, like really solid play. Should be definitely like a top 3 value for me on paper. But I mean, another guy you can easily poke a hole in. And I'm going to try to intentionally get unique, but I think that was it. Again, running back is gross. So that leads to me, eating the chalk in this situation.
All right, I think that is reasonable. Let me see if there's I wanted to like the Chicago guys, but I looked at their splits from last week and they were just so evenly split last week that I don't really know that I can go to any of them. We talked about, Zach Moss was the other name I was looking for that you have some interest in as a contrarian play. I don't know, these Rams running backs, like if Matthew Stafford were to play, I might have interest, but I'm not anticipating that he will play, and I think it's going to be a bad offense there. No, I think that we did cover all of the most interesting running backs. You want to talk about some wide receivers?
Let's do it.
All right, let's take a look at some wide receivers. And we'll start looking at the chalk again. So nobody over 20%. Adam Thielen now is our highest. That just kills me. That Adam Thielen is 7,500 and the highest owned. I'm not gonna go on a rant about Adam Thielen, but man, 20% ownership for Thielen, 19% AJ Brown, 17% Nico Collins, 17% Chris Olave. Above 15%, we have Zay Flowers, Demario Douglas, CeeDee Lamb, as well as those I mentioned. Who do you like? Who do you dislike among the chalky receivers?
Yeah, Adam Thielen should definitely not be number one. Should definitely not be above AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. He's up there. Like I wrote him up as a cash play because you just look at the numbers, the volume, the production. He's like basically Stephon Diggs this year. But for chalk, 7,500, not that much less than CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown. I just can't get on board with that. The matchup is also like not in his favor. Indianapolis is a top reverse slot funnel defense. They rank top 5 against slot wide receivers. They rank bottom 5 against outside wide receivers. Shout out Kenny Moore in the slot, but like on the perimeter, they just like keep losing starters who weren't even good to begin with. So it's like not on paper in his favor unless they get creative and unique with how they move him around. For this reason, I do like Jonathan Mingo, who was already popping as a top XFP related value and now has that matchup in his favor. And DJ Chark is banged up and questionable.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. He's dealing with an elbow injury and is supposedly legitimately questionable. You don't see too many elbow injuries for wide receivers.
Yeah, I actually noted on the morning show that I kind of like these guys as the just like low owned pivots and also a nice leverage play. Jonathan Mingo, especially if DJ Chark is out, just that makes it easy. But I was suggesting either Mingo or Chark could be interesting contrarian plays. After looking at their route participation last week, Mingo tied with Thielen, 37 routes run, 93% participation. DJ Chark just one less run. So I like those calls as contrarian options.
He hit a season high in receiving yards last week, right after that play caller change. Maybe there's something to that 62. Yeah.
I mean, promising. Lot of routes run, 5 targets is, nothing too exciting, but at his price tag, we'll take it. All right. So continuing along the chalk guys. So you don't love Thielen, you're poking holes there. What about the other chalk receivers?
Yeah. So last week I thought AJ Brown was a must just because look at his recent production. He's had 6 straight games with 125 receiving yards or more. That's an NFL record. You look at the usage, which is like improving somehow. Like it's insane. Like a 50% first read target share against man coverage, just like obscene. Like based on all that, it feels like he should be $1K more expensive. He has the ideal schematic matchup. He shreds single high coverage, which the Cowboys run at the second highest rate in the league. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas changes things up this week to account for that. But like, regardless, this is a really tough matchup. Dallas has been awesome. They lead the league in fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receiver ones, and they lead it by a wide margin. If you think that means that makes Devonta Smith more interesting, they're also best against wide receiver twos. They just really good defense. You could sort by outside wide receivers. Curious I'm sure they rank like top 3. Wide receiver 1 is like my own custom thing that so top 3 against outside wide receivers by schedule adjusted. Brutal matchup. And like, AJ Brown can certainly overcome the toughest matchups, but across his recent hot streak, it was 2 games against Washington. There were some other favorable matchups in there. Listen, he's a great play. It's really scary to fade him, but there's a reason for it if you want. And I think he's definitely a better play than CeeDee Lamb, but like, I wouldn't be shocked if CeeDee Lamb is the highest scoring wide receiver from this game. Like that's why I was off him, was because Jerry Jones is saying we want to spread the ball around more. Gallup had out-targeted Lamb 21-18 over the previous month of the season, but it seems like they came to their senses. He had 10 more targets than the next closest Dallas wide receiver last week, destroyed the slate, and it's an amazing matchup. Eagles rank 3rd worst in fantasy points per game to wide receiver 1s. They rank 6th worst in schedule adjusted allowed to slot wide receivers. The schematic matchup, just like with AJ Brown, is in his favor. CeeDee Lamb destroys single high coverage. Eagles play single high at a top 7 rate, according to the coverage matrix. Shout out again. And so everything popping for CD. Hopefully Dallas just continues to do what clearly worked last week, which is get the ball to this guy. Like before last week too, it was like so obvious. The guy ranked like 50th among all wide receivers in target share and like 4th in yardage share. Just like get this guy the ball. It's working. Nico Collins, I really like, I was hoping he'd be contrarian because I was all over him last week and he burned me. So it's a little surprising to see him as chalk. Argument for him is like, this guy ranks top 5 in yards per route run, clearly has a tournament winning ceiling with season long highs of 39 and 31 DraftKings fantasy points. Argue against him is like, well, he has a minuscule subterranean floor with season lows of 7, 6.9, 5.4. His route share, like you brought up before, isn't that high. Neutral matchup. But I still think he's a really strong value. Chris Olave, this goes back to Tony Pollard and Josh Jacobs. Argument against him is everyone's been saying he's a regression candidate for how many weeks now, and they've been wrong for exactly how many weeks in a row that's been. Since week 12 of last season, Rashid Shaheed has more receiving yards on half as many targets. He's been awful, easily one of the top 3 least efficient wide receivers in fantasy. Maybe he just has a terrible rapport with Derek Carr. That said, maybe I'm the sucker who, just keeps crying regression to the mean, but I really do see that coming. I think he's a great play. Volume's just been out of control. He's had some bad luck. Matchup's good. Jalen Johnson hasn't been shadowing this year, so it's a low end top 10 matchup for Olave. Could see this being a get right spot. Demario Douglas, argument against him, I think, is that, well, he's chalk, even though he only had 25 receiving yards last week. But I get it, like Kendrick Bourne is out, Devontae Parker's out. He's their slot wide receiver. New England slot wide receivers have been a cheat code for fantasy for like 2 decades now. Clear wide receiver 1 last week, 84% route share, 7 targets, 6 catches. If you look at XFP per route run, he ranks 14th of 135 qualifying receivers. Like amazing usage when he's actually been on the field. Matchup is either amazing or fine. Washington's like neutral to the slot, but like worse in the league on the outside, but maybe they just like suck everywhere. But I mean, he's 4K and he's like uber chalky, and there's a lot of sub 4K wide receivers I like nearly as much. So that's the route I'm going to go. Zay Flowers, I think, is a really easy fade for tournaments. People have been trying to play him in tournaments every week, and it's just not working. He ranks 15th among all receivers and receptions, but on throws 5+ yards downfield, he ranks 72nd. He's basically Alvin Kamara without any rushing production. So just like no ceiling. great schematic matchup and all that, but I don't know. I've been fading him in tournaments for a while, and it's worked out for me. Terry McLaurin, fine play, fine value. No Curtis Samuel, I get it. But New England's been like the best defense in the league against wide receiver ones this year. Maybe that's that old narrative that Belichick intentionally sells out to stop an opposing team's wide receiver one. Maybe they don't hold McLaurin in such high regard as with, Adams and Tyreek and whatever, but I certainly get the value there. Pittman, I just really like. I just flat out really like. I also wouldn't sleep on Josh Downs, even with that injury. Matchup's definitely more in Pittman's favor. But still, I could see a way for Downs to get there if 9.3, that's fine. Yeah, never mind. I thought he was going to go a lot lower than that. But I actually really like Pittman. And I think I like Amari Cooper even more. I think Amari Cooper is an awesome play. So like I've been talking about this since like 2019. Amari Cooper's home road splits are insane. So luckily he's at home this week. Volume has been awesome all year. 8 targets in 5 of his last 6. He's had at least 89 receiving yards in 4 of his last 6. He gets a top 3 matchup against Arizona, and he gets Deshaun Watson back, where like the big if is Deshaun Watson can be competent, because you could play around with the fantasy points data suite. And if you want to look at uncatchable targets, Amari Cooper leads the league in percentage of targets which are deemed uncatchable. If you want to look at uncatchable XFP, easily leads the league. So it's like you give him a competent quarterback and he could be an easy wide receiver one for fantasy and no one's really aware of it. But like since 2018, he's always been a wide receiver one when playing at home. So I really like him. I thought once we got the news that Deshaun Watson was back, I considered putting him in my cash core. Tyler Lockett, I think, is, famous last words. Like my track record on betting DK Metcalf versus Tyler Lockett is not good historically. Yeah. But I definitely think it's a DK Metcalf week this week. And I feel pretty convicted about that.
All right.
Probably more than I should.
We have Lockett at 11% ownership. Where do we have DK? DK at 6%. So, if you think it's a DK Metcalf week, looks like a nice week to target DK Metcalf.
He's seen 14 and 9 targets the last 2 weeks and back-to-back brutal matchups, which includes, Denzel Ward's shadow coverage. It's also like a perfect schematic matchup for him. Ravens play a ton of man coverage and single man coverage. And Metcalf has clearly been the guy there. 47% first read target share against man, that ranks second most among all wide receivers. So really feel strongly about DK over Lockett this week. Wish I didn't, because I built a bunch of lineups that like where Lockett would fit perfectly. And
really? Oh man,
Metcalf is right out of range. But Lockett's fine. Again, like, yeah, I'm probably overconfident because they've been impossible to pick between for 3 years now.
Yeah, right. Do I need to like drastically adjust my priors on Elijah Moore? Because I see 3,900 facing the Cardinals. I look at his involvement in the offense. He's run the most routes, 84% route participation on the year, 87% last week. Like there's so much here that looks like there's got to be regression coming for Elijah Moore. He's 3,900 against the Cardinals.
Go back to that. And the craziest thing about that is 85 air yards, 17 ADOT
last week. Yeah.
Wow. I totally missed that. But before that, he was like leading all wide receivers outside of Rondale Moore and like targets out of the backfield, really low ADOT. So I was saying he just wasn't an upside play. I will say target share has really come down where Njoku's has risen the last few weeks, which kind of put me off of him. But I missed that. I think that's a really good call. I still definitely prefer Amari. I think he's the clear wide receiver one, most upside, but that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's just like coming into the year, he was a top 100 best ball pick. Like people loved him coming into the year. Felt like, he's finally got a quarterback to play with in Deshaun Watson, and just has not happened at all this year. He's down to 39. This feels like the kind of spot that I often like to target, where it's just like this player is just like bottoming out in terms of both salary and ownership. He gets an elite matchup. Maybe just hope that the talent maybe is not as bad as he has been so far this year. So I don't know.
So
Maybe
I'm the world's biggest Elijah Moore truther.
you are okay.
Yeah. I almost leaked the news that he got traded to the Browns. I'm like friends with the family just because like I hyped him up so much when he was coming out of college and pounded the table for him. I think he's so good. Like it's so hard to argue, like given his production. But if you look at like ESPN's open score, if you look at fantasy points, open rate, he just gets open all the time. And for whatever reason, like none of those balls are catchable. And so like the production's not there. I really think like he's not being used the right way. Although like last week, apparently he finally was, and he's just running bad with poor quarterback play. But I do think he's like a super underrated talent.
Okay, I'm glad maybe I'll take some shots because he's not under 1% owned or anything like that, but like fairly contrarian, at least kind of interesting. Have we sufficiently answered Michelle's question? What would you do for a Saint stack because you can't fit both receivers in with Alvin Kamara? Sounds like you are in on Olave more so than Shaheed this week. Any interest in Michael Thomas this week?
I seriously question the ceiling. I know people want to play him, but like look at what he's done this year. He's scored 10.5 fantasy points, give or take 1.5 in every single game. So like, consistent production, decent ceiling, but like, what is that worth in a tournament? It's not worth anything.
Okay. So it would be Olave for you of the Saints guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Olave Kamara, maybe like that could be your stack.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to answer that. And then we had another question I wanted to touch on just because I know.
Also shout out to Saint Steven 68 who said he subscribed to Fantasy Points.
Oh, nice.
Shout out to him. Anytime you ask a question now, I'm going to answer
it. Perfect.
Special treatment.
And then I wanted to answer Chris Ostro's question because I have an easy way to look this up using the Fantasy Points.
Yeah, and so I'll have the answer to this because this is one of my favorite plays of the slate. That's Noah Brown. So with Robert Woods out last week, you'll see this in a second, Neil. With Robert Woods out last week, Brown led the team in receiving yards. He ran exactly as many routes as Nico Collins. He finished second on the team in target share. And he ran, most importantly, 65% of his routes from the slot. Why is that important this week? Because if you look back at the schedule adjusted fantasy points per game tool, you'll notice that Tampa Bay ranks dead last in the league against slot wide receivers, but they rank middle of the pack against outside wide receivers. So it's a slot funnel matchup. It's a best possible matchup for a slot wide receiver. No one wants to play him. He's 100 off of the site minimum. So You don't have it this way, Neil. You don't have it this way, but a lot of other sites are steaming up Wan'Dale Robinson as chalk, like a player who's cleared 40 receiving yards once all season. DeMario Douglas as chalk, who had 25 receiving yards last week. And so I'm seeing a lot of sub 4K guys who are really interesting. And Noah Brown is probably at the top of that list. I think he's just a flat out great play. We've seen ceiling performances from these Houston wide receivers. And this is the one that's in the best matchup with at least comparable usage last week with Robert Woods out.
All right. That was a good call out there. So Noah Brown is your guy to answer Chris's question. I wanted to show him where you can see
Tank Dell is fine, but I do prefer Noah Brown.
Yeah. I've already said I like Nico Collins and Tank Dell, but just looking at and I keep on scrolling past it. I found it for a second in the other
slot route.
Yeah, where is it?
It was to the right. You just had it up all the way to the right before the fantasy stuff. Yeah. So back, field route, inline route, slot route.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Noah Brown, 65% in the slot last week. Definitely looks like a nice spot there. Okay, just wanted to answer that question for Chris since we have it. All right, I'll sort by ownership again, and you can. Who else do you like as far as, did you have more contrarian receivers you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me look through my list of names. We talked just about all the chalky guys. We talked Olave, Nico, Amari, Pittman. Devontae Adams, listen, like I get it. In Aiden O'Connell's last start, Devontae Adams had a 50% first read target share, 60% air yardage share. I think he led all wide receivers in XFP that week. So volume's going to be there. And so maybe he's getting AJ Brown, Adam Thielen volume at like 1/3 of the ownership. I do worry about quarterback play. But like at least, and we also have the narrative of, they just fired their coach. They're going to want to reward him for sticking around and all that. It makes sense. I don't think he's an amazing play, but I think it certainly makes sense. And what's the ownership you have for him?
Sorry, who are we talking about?
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, somebody that I was high on. Let's see, 9%. So not super chalky.
Yep. So I certainly get that. Probably my favorite low-owned guy is Christian Watson. What are you showing for him?
You're a sucker for Christian Watson, though, aren't you? I feel you like him quite a bit
for Christian. But like
4.5.
Neil, we're doubling and tripling down here. So you look at his production, he's or volume. He's basically only played 2 fully healthy games this year. He saw 7 and 8 targets in those games, 321 total air yards, which would lead the league in air yards per game. He had 91 receiving yards in one of those games. Maybe he's still hurt. Jordan Love definitely sucks, but he's 4,900. This is a player I was really convicted on in season-long leagues, and I still feel convicted on. Worst case scenario, we just know he's a super volatile play week to week, which guess what is something you want to lean into in DFS tournaments. The matchup on paper, if you look at the schedule adjusted, is really bad, but you dig deeper into it. It's like Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb. They all cleared 100 plus receiving yards against them. Rams also like notably have no pass rush, which should help Love look for Watson on those deeper routes. But I just mean like 4,900, 4.5%. I'm going to be all over that this week. And, maybe I am a sucker, but that is going to be how I play it.
I now that you brought it up and looking at the tools, I had not thought of him earlier, but we have some nice positive leverage on Christian Watson. Maybe I'll actually end up with you because that price tag, the ownership, the leverage we have here. Yeah. Not something that I had been really on my mind, but I think I'm with you. I think that looks like a pretty solid play here.
Worst case scenario, he's arbitrage Olave. Like Olave is getting all these air yards that he's not turning into real yards, and like guarantee like Christian Watson's going to be right there with air yards this week. And who knows, maybe just efficiency's more in his favor this week.
All right. Anybody else that you feel you need to talk about?
Yeah, a bunch of cheap guys. So we just talked about Christian Watson. Like if you think I'm wrong and like I'm just irrationally in love with Christian Watson, like why not Jaden Reed? He led the team in routes run last week. He led the team in receiving yards last week. He had 83. He leads on the full season. He leads the team in yards. He easily leads the team in yards per route run. He ranks top 35 by yards per route run.
Wow.
He also definitely has the best match of the group. We said this last week, Neil. Rams are tough against wide receivers on the outside, but they're a slot funnel. And so after CeeDee Lamb just dropped, 43 fantasy points against them, they rank bottom 10 against slot wide receivers and top 3 against outside wide receivers. Guess what? He's their slot wide receiver, and he's only 3,600 after, again, leading the team in routes and receiving yards last week. So I think he's a really strong value. I think this is a good week to go stars and scrubs, which is like actually what I'm doing. And I keep finding a lot of these scrubby wide receivers I think are interesting. Another one is Jamison Crowder. So after Curtis Samuel had his game-ending injury last week, Jahan Dotson and Crowder combined for 72% of Sam Howell's passing yards. Crowder averaged 5.6 yards per route run, which is like insane. I don't think Curtis Samuel is very good. I think it's just like a function of that role that was so productive and a role that maybe dates back to Eric Bieniemy's time in Kansas City, like Mecole Hardman getting those shovel pass touchdowns and all that. Sure. So Jamison Crowder at 3,400, 0% ownership. I like that a lot. Another guy, which is like the grossest yet, is Cordell Hodge.
That is
Like
gross.
it is gross. Taylor Heineke is like a massive upgrade on Desmond Ridder. There's something I've been talking about in DFS for like 6 years, which is called the backup connection. When a backup quarterback comes in and is now starting, and a backup wide receiver is now starting, that quarterback tends to lock onto that wide receiver because they have a clear established rapport from so many scrimmages and practices with the second string offense. And so you kind of saw that last week. Hodge ran 18 routes last week after the Drake London injury. That was 12 more than Mac Hollins. That was 10 more than Scotty Miller. 18 routes, and he had 75 yards on 3 targets. He has a great matchup on paper, 3,400. No one's going to play him. It's just like, if I were an MME bro, I would intentionally go underweight DeMario and Wandale, who are chalk, not according to Stokastic, but I guess according to what we had on our site, like super chalky, and really try and load up on names like Jonathan Mingo, Noah Brown, Jaden Reed, and then to a lesser extent Crowder and Cordell Hodge. Beyond that, you could bet on volume for Marquise Brown. That's fine. Mike Evans, I think, is getting a little underrated. He's had like brutal matchups in recent weeks. Shadow coverage from AJ Terrell. The Bills are tough. But if you exclude that one game he left early, 18.3 fantasy points per game, 17.0 XFP per game. Those are top 7 numbers on the slate. So do see him getting just like a little bit, just a tiny bit underrated. I do like him more than Godwin, but some of the other guys at our site disagree and think it's a Godwin week.
Interesting. So debate in the fantasy points community. All right. Anybody else that you want to mention, or should I throw some names at you?
Yeah, throw some names at me.
All right. Well, first of all, I already talked about the Giants. We talked about the Giants have a great offense. You kind of made the case, brought up Danny Dimes, and part of the reason that I was buying into it is Darius Slayton has been running so many routes, over 90% route participation in recent weeks, and he's 3,200. Jalen Hyatt just over 50%, so he's not quite there, but 3,000, a little bit interesting. Wandale, as you said, we don't have him as extremely chalky. It sounds like you do, which would take away my interest in Wandale. But at the very least, Darius Slayton, just like with his route participation in recent weeks, to me, seems like somebody that is a positive regression candidate, especially if the offensive line is getting better, if Daniel Jones is getting healthier. Any interest there in Darius Slayton?
I think Slayton's an underrated talent. I think he's like better than, I guess, production and usage implies, but the production's not there. He doesn't have 11 DraftKings fantasy points in any game. And like, he had the route share weeks 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and like just did nothing with it. I almost made a case for Jalen Hyatt, who like prior to last week, like the 2 games prior to last week was like top 3 in air yards. And so like, that's an argument towards upside. But I dug into it, and I think that was just a case of Tyrod Taylor just being better than Daniel Jones.
Okay.
Daniel Jones over his last 8 games has completed a deep pass in only 2 of those games. Like,
wow,
that's horrific. So I do think Wandale definitely makes the most sense. Maybe with Waller out, like that was clearly his favorite target. So maybe he just locks into him. But no, if you're playing Daniel Jones, you can make a case for any of these guys who are super cheap. For one-offs, I'd probably steer clear of that, I think.
Okay, fair enough. Rashad Bateman, Lamar Jackson came out and said they need to get him more involved. He's 3,300. The route participation hasn't been there, so it feels a little bit thin to me, but any interest there?
I missed that. That's an interesting comment. Yeah, I could see it. He's another guy who's just season high of 36 receiving yards, done nothing all year. But like Zay Flowers, they're just peppering with screens, and it's not really working. If you look at how often those are converting into first down, so maybe they do need Bateman to step up, and they do look his way more often this week. I don't know.
Okay.
I won't be playing him, but that's interesting.
I think you're like sub 50% route participation, so can't like fully endorse him as though like if you were a 90% route participation guy and the quarterback came out and said we need to get him involved, then I'd be interested. But this is I might have a couple shares, but not somebody that I can go crazy on when he's just not really playing enough. These Rams guys looks to me it's fully dependent on Matthew Stafford. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and even then, what is it? It's like low owned guys with upside you can sprinkle in. Like right now, that no one knows if Matthew Stafford can grip a football. So it's like,
right.
Do we expect him to play all that well? I don't know.
I don't know that I have anybody else that I really wanted to talk about here. You want to move on to tight ends or anything else that you need?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's talk about some tight ends. Let me move to the tight ends here. Then we'll build some lineups. All right, so the chalk at tight end, only 3 players above 10%, and they're all 12% or lower. We've got Dallas Goedert 11%, Dalton Schultz 11%, TJ Hawkinson 12%, and I guess we'll throw Mark Andrews at 9.9%. These 4 guys, who do you like the best? Who do you like the least? What are you thinking for these 4?
So TJ Hawkinson, argument against him is pretty easy. It's he's not playing with Kirk Cousins. He's not playing with the team's second string quarterback. He's playing with the third string quarterback who looked totally lost in preseason. I mean, I still get it. Like I still get why he's a value, but I would be intentionally fading that without Kirk Cousins. Dalton Schultz too, I think like 4,200. I get that he's seen more target volume in recent weeks, and he actually has good touchdown upside. He easily leads all tight ends in end zone targets this year. But still, it's just like from what I'm seeing, like I don't see a player who's 4,200 and should be chalk. Dallas Goedert, I love. I think Dallas Goedert's like a legitimately amazing play. I kind of don't know why he's not chalk. If you look over his last 4 games, 29, 9, 19, and 8 DraftKings fantasy points. So clearly some volatility there, but also like unrivaled upside or nearly unrivaled upside. Over the span, volume has been good, 7.3 targets per game. It's a slight tight end funnel matchup. So I definitely like Dallas Goedert. And we talked about reasons why we should be a little skeptical of AJ Brown's ceiling in this game and Devonta Smith. So I wouldn't be surprised if Goddard steps up. Mark Andrews, I think, is an awesome play. Like so hard to find upside and value on this slate, but like Andrews really comes close. He's exceeded 60 yards in 4 of his last 5 games, 16.9 DraftKings fantasy points per game over the span. That's significantly above Hawkinson with Cousins. That's like 60% more than the next closest tight end, who's Goddard, who we just talked about how hot he's been running. So yeah, I like Mark Andrews.
I think you mentioned David Njoku as somebody that you have more interested in than Elijah Moore. Is that correct?
Yeah, I kind of had Schultz and Njoku, Logan Thomas all in like this second. They're all fine. They're all just fine. It's just, tight end kind of sucks. And
right.
This is especially sucky slate, which again, I think isn't an argument for Andrews or it's an argument for like the cheapest viable punt just because,
right.
Kyle Pitts, I'm surprised, is not chalky.
Yeah. Somebody in chat just brought him out. No Drake London.
Right. So it's, and like no exaggeration, Taylor Heineke is like easily the best quarterback Kyle Pitts has ever caught a pass from, easily. And
okay, wow,
easily. And so with Drake London ruled out, I'm like, I don't think Heineke's good. So there's that. With Drake London ruled out, like, right, you have to think, so Kyle Pitts is now the team's wide receiver 1, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. It's Arthur Smith we're talking about here, folks. And, Drake London left that game early last week and like Pitts had like a 5% target share. So,
right. Yeah. There's no guarantees with Arthur Smith. I think he's just trolling us. Like he's not going to pass it to Kyle Pitts because we want him to is the reason I think for Arthur Smith. Last week, I believe you said you thought Trey McBride should be 50% owned last week. I was not in on Trey McBride. Greg liked him, and then you loved him, and it kind of convinced me. I bumped him down in my Sims, which I really wish I hadn't, because he got there in a big way last week. Do you feel the same way about Trey McBride this week?
Yeah. So the thesis behind that call was like, it's clear that tight end is a focal point of the offense. You look at targets per route run, McBride ranked third, Zach Ertz ranked fourth. He's been good this year. He ranks behind only Travis Kelce in yards per route run. And what happened last week? 88% route share. That's, top two numbers, 14 targets, most of any tight end in the season, 38% target share, 45% first read target share, most of any tight end on the season, caught 10 of his targets for 95 yards. Looked awesome. Counter argument, there's a new quarterback, which kind of muddies the projection.
Yep.
It's a literal worst possible matchup on paper. But I'm still inclined to think he should be above 7.1%. He should be more expensive than 3,700. Probably not as convicted as I was last week, but I do still like him.
Okay. Yeah, we have him right, like perfectly owned at 7.1% ownership. We have him 7.1% optimal. So yeah, definitely reasonable to think that you would have him a little bit more optimal than that. Luke Musgrave, Daniel Bell. So here's one that I want to talk about. Daniel Bellinger with no Darren Waller for the Giants. Any interest there?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I actually forgot to write him up. I missed that one. I think that's a really good call, because that's what I was saying, right? Makes sense to pay all the way up or pay all the way down, or Goddard's in that mixed and so on. Could be just cheapest viable tight end. Probably doesn't get there, but maybe the extra savings helps out a lot. Luke Musgrave was probably the last guy on my list. He's a little banged up with an ankle injury, but it's just like a great matchup. Rams are one of the top tight end funnel matchups, so he's in play.
Yep. So number of those Packers guys that you like, and I think you did say that you like Jordan Love also. Is that correct? So another guy you can include in your Packers stacks if you want to. All right. Any other tight ends, or you want to build some lineups?
Oh, we forgot Hunter Henry. Shout out to whoever said that in chat. Yeah, I think Hunter Henry makes a lot of sense. He was on a roll to start the year, and then he kind of just disappeared. But, without all those, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, makes sense that he should step up again. I think he's strongly in play.
Hunter Henry. And what about Mike Gesicki? Like, you prefer Henry over Gesicki?
Yeah, okay. Gesicki stinks.
All right, fair enough. All right, any other tight ends, or should we build some lineups?
Yeah, let's build.
All right, we're gonna build some lineups here. Going to Millie Makers. So we're building for the $20 Millie Maker, 178,000. We got 1,234th last week. Let's see if we can beat it this week, Scott.
Let's do it.
All right. Do you want to start with the first stack, or should I?
You can. I know what I want to do, but it really pigeonholes us into a situation where I build the whole lineup. So I'll try and come up with something else.
I'm debating whether I'm going to do what my first instinct is to do, which I'm not sure you're going to love, but it's very much going to pigeonhole us into a contrarian lineup that would then allow us to surround it with better plays. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do Daniel Jones. I'm going to do Devontae Adams. Where is he? Oh, wait, wide receiver. Oh, I didn't scroll up more. Okay. Devontae Adams. And then I'm going to do, what do I want to do here? I think I'm going to go with the Darius Slayton. I hear you when you say he hasn't worked out. He's been getting the route participation, but this is a great matchup with the Raiders. I'm tempted to also throw my guy Bellinger in there. Just like, so we're getting super contrarian right away, and then we can just do whatever we want as far as the projections around this. So this is my inclination to start with this completely off the wall Giant stack, I guess, before you yell at me for for not searching, Scott. All right, there we go. All right, so this is how I want to start. Now, my opinion is from here, you just build in the plays. You play the best plays around this type of stack. I know you hate it. I know it's ugly. I gave you a pretty stack last week. I started with Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, and then you threw AJ Brown in there. This one's much grosser, but I like these kind of gross under owned kind of plays.
Feedback? All right, so I'm gonna give you a veto, but it's not gonna be one that breaks your heart. Okay. So Daniel Jones is unique, like Tannehill with Henry, in that they're actually like, in Jones's case, just barely, but positively correlated over the past 2 seasons. And I do think Saquon is one of the best plays of the slate. And I don't see much passing upside for Daniel Jones. Like I really think the thesis is like he runs a lot, and Saquon's there to actually like get first down so they can sustain drives and progress down the field. And so I'm going to make you, I would have went with Wan'Dale personally, but that's fine. I'm just going to make you pick between one of Slayton and Bellinger.
All right. I'm going to go with Slayton. Now you okay. We're 4 weeks removed, Scott, from you saying, no, I'm not playing Wan'Dale Robinson. There's no upside there. So that has changed since he's running more routes now.
I think it makes more sense when you're talking about like a Daniel Jones stack and like he is super cheap and maybe he just gets like 9 targets because there's no one else now without Waller. But yeah, for non-Jones teams, like I'd rather just fade a chalky Wan'Dale betting against him having upside.
All right, fair. That's a fair, probably a good use of a veto there. Because it might have been a little bit thin going with the 2 pass catchers, but and Saquon looks great in this matchup. So I'm not heartbroken. You are correct. You made a good veto that did not break my heart. All right, what else do you want to do with this team?
Let's you want to jam in Kamara?
Yeah, we could try that. Now we're down to 4,300 per player. Should we throw in a defense here?
Yeah.
I mean, the Giants are playing against Aiden O'Connell. They're the cheapest.
You could argue good starting field position from turnovers that benefit Jones and Barkley.
True. Should we do it?
Yeah, also like Packers, Patriots are also fine.
Patriots were the first defense that I thought of playing, but because we've already
I wish we talked about chalk defenses, because like
you want to just touch
can I just look at ownership?
Yep. All right.
I only have one take and I don't even know if I have it.
All right, because you want to see what the ownership is.
Yeah.
All right, so the chalkiest defense right now, Saints and Patriots are our highest owned, followed by the Packers.
Okay, yeah. So I was seeing Patriots as like super chalky, and I think the Giants are a much better play at price. And maybe the Packers as well. A couple other teams. Like, I mean, this is a great week for defenses. So why target Sam Howell when you could target like any of these second and third string quarterbacks? And with Howell in particular, he was only sacked once last week against by the Eagles. They've really sped up his time to throw the last 2 weeks, so maybe they figured that out. So I do think Patriots are probably going to go over-owned.
All right, and that was something I said. I think I said on the show last week. This could be a 10-sack game for the Eagles. That did not come to fruition at all. I think they ended up. I think they got some an interception or something. So it wasn't like completely bad, but like Sam Howell went off and they did not sack him at all. So yeah, that call did not work out for me. All right, so do you want to do Giants defense here with the Giants stack?
Yeah, screw it.
All right, and we're doing then Giants against Devontae Adams, which I think is fine. All right, so we need a tight end in here, a wide receiver, and a flex. Should we do a cheap tight end to see what we can fit in elsewhere?
Let's do. I'll let you pick between my favorite shitty cheap wide receivers.
Okay.
Noah Brown, Jonathan Mingo, Jaden Reed, Jamison Crowder, Connor Hodge.
I'm gonna throw out those last two. Those
I know. I laugh each time I say their names, so they can't be great plays, right?
Right. I like the Mingo call. I actually
I do think if you're an MME guy, those guys are in play. If you're not MME, like pretend I never mentioned those names.
Let's go with. I'm drawn to Mingo here. I'm going to go to Mingo. All right, tight end. So now we have 5,700 left over. So we actually have some money to play with. I mean, even if we go to Andrews, we can play a reasonable flex option. But if we go cheaper, we can go pay up in the flex.
Could we fit Lamb? Is that possible?
CD Lamb in the flex?
Like, would that be possible to fit that?
Yes, if we play, so we can play up to Tyler Higbee,
Michael Mayer, K. Dotton, Bellinger. Yeah, I'd say screw that.
Okay.
What if we played Watson or Olave or Pittman or Amari Cooper, who I like a lot?
Yeah, let's try that. So if we go to Amari Cooper, then we could play Hawkinson, who you were not super high on, but you really like Dallas Goedert. So if we did Dallas Goedert in there, then we would have, I think, 6,500 left over to play, 6,600 to play in the flex.
Pittman.
You love Pittman.
Yeah. Olave. This is where I land in all my lineups that I've built so far. Is I have 6,600 for the flex, and I'm like, who do I pick? I don't know. I love Amari. I love Olave. I love Pittman. And I probably don't have it. I probably don't have them ranked by their salary. But anyway, this fits perfectly, unless you want to upgrade the defense, which we could do, because I don't know how much sense it makes to pair Adams with Giants defense or Jones with Giants. I don't know. That's you're the expert on that end, Neil. So your call.
So it's funny, when I set my optimizer rules, I don't allow for defense against opposing plays on a main slate, but I also think it's totally fine. Like I could certainly, you laid out the reason. Like one of the reasons is maybe the Giants have a couple interceptions that give them good field position, and then they capitalize it with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Darius Slayton. So I think that it's fine. It's, I typically not something I try to do, but honestly, I don't think that it's a huge deal, especially with the Giants being the cheapest defense. So I kind of like it. We got the secondary stack here with Pittman and Mingo in the same game. Some correlation there. We've got the full on Giant stack with Devonta Adams. I think I like it. I think I like this lineup. I'll enter it. We can do another one. All right. Wait, did I just enter? I think I just entered the same lineup again. Let's see here. All right. How do you want to start? You have been on mute for a while, I think, Scott.
The worst human being of all time. Clayton Tune and Rondell Moore. Let's do it.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Good.
So what I kind of want to do is Lamar, chalky running backs plus Andrews, which is what I did on the Cashing Point show, which was my favorite because then it forced me to play all my shitty sub 4K wide receivers. But we'll go in a different direction. If you want to see what that lineup looks like, just watch that show and scroll all the way to the end. Screw it. Let's do Watson plus Amari. We can consider Elijah or Njoku later on. I don't think that's totally necessary at the moment. Maybe Trey McBride makes sense. Maybe Hollywood just betting on the volume, but that feels a little thin.
All right, what do you think? Do you want to throw in a McBride or Njoku here, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, screw it. Let's play McBride for now. All
right,
tentatively.
Throw McBride in there. So we have, this is relatively inexpensive.
All right, you know what? Screw it. I take it back. We're getting trashed in comments. Keep Cooper, swap McBride, swap Watson for Jordan Love and Christian Watson.
All right. You're gonna let the commenters change our whole plan.
I just got bullied. Yeah, they bullied us off $1 million, Neil.
I'm just gonna go make that lineup separately. And win all the money. I'm going to win the whole million.
This is another issue because there's no bring back, or maybe there is. Maybe you can tell us one.
from the Rams. I can't tell you. Higbee, I guess, just go cheap. I don't love the Rams though. With no Stafford, I feel like that's pretty thin. But that's fine. Just have a single stack here, or we could double stack with the Packers if we want to.
All right, I'm going to force you into one of Saquon or Kamara or both.
Saquon or Kamara or both.
Or you know what? Screw it. Maybe we'll get unique on running back, but
well, we do have the Zach Moss play or the Tyler Algier. We can throw in one of those if we
or
wanted
Chuba
to.
Hubbard or
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. You want to start? What do you think, Kamara or?
Can I see defenses?
Yep. We could go back to the Giants defense with Saquon. A little bit of correlation there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Giants are the top value defense of the slate.
Do you want to just do it again, or do you want to go?
Yeah, screw it.
All right.
Plus Saquon.
All right, so now we still have 5,800 left over. Not bad. Do you want to go to something super contrarian like a Zach Moss, or we go back to our guy?
Let's put in my guy Goddard.
Your guy Goddard, yes. All right. 4,800. Now we're up to 6,166 left over per player. One running back, one wide receiver, one flex. All right. So last week we didn't play a single lineup with Rashid Shaheed in it. Is there any player that we need to have in this lineup that we haven't played yet?
That we haven't played on either of our first two lineups?
Yeah. Got Taylor.
We had Noah Brown, right?
We didn't play Noah Brown in the last one. You want to do that?
Noah Brown feels like my Rashid Shaheed this week.
All right. Yeah.
But Jaden Reed would make more sense for this lineup.
Did we play him in the last one? I feel like we did.
Jaden Reed? No, or Noah?
Jaden Reed. I thought we did. No, I chose Mingo. That's right. So yeah, we could go Reed here. You want to do that?
Yeah, but Noah Brown is the guy you need to play.
Well, then we're going to play him in the flex. And then we're going to see, we're going to have all the money left over to play Kamara. He was what, 3,400? I forget. I can search here. All right, Noah Brown. Oh, he's only 3,100. So we have 11,800 left to play a running back.
Well, DraftKings has a new rule this week. For every 1,000 in savings left over, it gives you a free 10 points.
Perfect. So, that'll do then.
Don't actually do that. I'm lying.
No. But if we do, so we have 3,700 left over.
Yeah.
To upgrade wherever we want. So you think we need to play Noah Brown? So should we upgrade Jaden Reed?
No, this is totally your call. I mean, Reed makes sense for the correlation.
All right. So if we play,
the only question is like, I guess game script concerns is like,
are the Rams going to be able to keep it close?
Yeah, Cup or Puka. Is there any way?
Yeah, I mean, Cup looked pretty good in our tools. Like he is such a target monster. Puka is also questionable. What's the latest? Yeah, still says questionable with a knee injury.
All right, so click Cup.
All right, we're going Cup.
Click out Kamara.
Yep. Jonathan Taylor.
No. Jones? Aaron Jones?
Really? Wait, what's the no on Jonathan Taylor?
Just that he's chalky, but I mean he's chalky and he's like only slightly better play than Moss. I mean, we could go cheap with like Moss or Algier and then upgrade somewhere else. I don't know.
I mean, so I'm not really that concerned with the chalk because we have Jordan Love with Christian Watson and Jaden Reed. Like that is super low owned to start.
Yeah, but my question is he like legitimately good chalk though?
I mean, he's playing against the Panthers.
I know.
It's a fair question. We talked about Zach Moss as somebody we like. To me, he seems like fine chalk. Like he's got pretty high upside here. Bijan, yeah, that could work. Aaron Jones, is he fully good to go? Yeah, no injured.
He wouldn't make sense on this lineup.
Right. True.
Can we pivot off of Love? Is it too late for that?
If we pivot off of Love, we might. Well, yeah, we can certainly pivot off of Love.
Oh boy.
We can switch to Stroud with Noah Brown and Nico Collins or something.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so we're going Stroud
I just enjoy building lineups with you, I think is what it is.
Yeah, you just want to like keep pivoting and just so we can make a million different lineups.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fun, especially after we had such a great week last week. It's like, how are we going to do better? How are we going to outperform that top 1% lineup?
All right, take out Cup, put in Nico.
Take out Cup. Yep.
Take out Cooper, put in Evans.
Mike Evans.
Put in Kamara.
Sorry, 400 we need to save here. We downgrade either Watson or Evans or Goddard.
Goddard to Pitts.
That could work. 300 left over to let's see.
I'm shook, Neil. I'm shook.
You're shook?
I'm a little shook.
As in you don't love this lineup?
I'm 2 in my head right now is what it is.
It's a lot to live up to after we finished in the top 1% last week.
There's just a lot on the line. This decision is worth $1 million guaranteed for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's a perfect lineup.
I mean, I thought we absolutely nailed that first one where we ended with Jonathan Taylor, that love lineup. I was like, oh man, this is so perfect. And then we got shook off it. So maybe we'll have to make that one too.
Yeah, well, the lineups where you pick first have made more money so far. So maybe this one doesn't even matter.
I mean, that might just be because of the 1 week where we finished in the top 1% with my lineup. I guess we had a Daniel Jones stack that actually worked out well week 2 or something. So I guess we've had a few, but I thought it was a solid lineup. I think this is a solid lineup too. You want to go with this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
I like the Stroud double stack. I don't know that it's worked yet this year. The Stroud double stack. Like I feel like it has been either or between Tank Dell and Nico Collins, but maybe I might be wrong about that. But
well, you don't need much from a guy who's 3,100. So
true, very true. When does the ownership load day of game? I don't know what that means. All right. Any final thoughts, Scott? Anything else we need to look at? All right. We are good to go.
Yeah.
All right. Good show once again. Hopefully one of the lineups that we just built, even if it's the one that we went away from where we landed on Jonathan Taylor, I really like that, man. Just the fact that it worked out so perfect. I think that's what I liked about it, is just that it worked out so perfectly salary wise that I think one of the 3 lineups that we built is going to win the Millie this week, which I'm excited about. I know, as you said, this is an ugly slate. These are our slates to take advantage of the field getting things wrong. I feel like we made some good lineups here, had a good discussion. Scott, thanks again for coming back to another episode of Outside the Box. Thank you to everybody for watching the channel. We've really appreciated the support. I should note, again, all of our links in the description of this video. So if you're going to sign up for our tools at Stokastic or the Fantasy Points tools, please do use the link in the description of the video. Helps us out quite a bit. And of course, hit the like button. I don't think I said this yet in the show, Scott. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Please do subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so, and hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, watching the show. Good luck this weekend.